The transport ship Vigilant Dawn hummed through the void between star systems, carrying a diplomatic convoy that would forever change the galaxy's perception of humanity. Alara Chen stood in the cargo bay, her engineering toolkit spread across a makeshift workbench, completely unaware that she was about to become the subject of the most watched interstellar broadcast in Coalition history. The Carthax were apex predators 7 foot tall, bipedal carnivores with obsidian scales, retractable claws, and a reputation that made entire species reconsider their expansionist policies. Their homeworld produced warriors so fearsome that the Galactic Coalition had spent 3 centuries negotiating treaties just to avoid conflict. When humanity had been discovered 5 years ago, the Coalition had expected the Carthax to view them as prey. Instead, something unprecedented happened. Ambassador Thexerol of the Carthax delegation entered the cargo bay with his young offspring in tow. Kor was barely 3 cycles old, a juvenile by Carthax standards, but already possessed the characteristic predatory grace of his species. His scales were a lighter shade of gray, and his eyes held that peculiar mixture of curiosity and hunger that marked all young hunters. Engineer Chen, Thexerol rumbled, his translator device rendering his clicks and growls into standard Coalition speech. I apologize for the intrusion. Kor has been restless. I thought perhaps observing your work might occupy his attention. Alara looked up from the plasma conduit she was repairing and smiled. That was her first mistake, or perhaps her greatest fortune. To most species in the Coalition, baring one's teeth was a threat display, but Alara's smile was genuine, warm, and utterly human. No problem at all, Ambassador. I could use the company. She glanced at Kor, who was already stalking toward her workbench with the focused intensity of a natural-born killer. Just keep him away from the fusion cells. Those tend to explode when poked. Thexerol's mandibles clicked in what the translator interpreted as amusement.
He has been instructed.
Though I cannot promise he will listen. What happened next would be analyzed by xenobiologists, behavioral scientists, and military strategists for decades to come. Kor approached the workbench, his predatory instincts cataloging everything, the tools, the components, the strange human female who smelled nothing like prey, yet radiated no predator's threat. He watched as Alara's nimble fingers manipulated delicate circuitry, her movements precise and confident. When she reached for a micro-welder, Kor saw his opportunity. He lunged, his juvenile fangs closed around Alara's thermal-resistant work glove with surprising force. Any other species in the Coalition would have panicked. The Verdani would have released fear pheromones. The Quilix would have triggered their defensive paralysis. Even the warrior Brenthax would have reached for weapons. Alara did something that no Carthax had ever witnessed in response to an attack. She laughed, not a nervous titter or a fear response vocalization. A genuine, delighted laugh that came from deep in her chest, bubbling up like a natural spring. Her dark eyes sparkled with pure amusement as she looked down at the cub dangling from her glove. Well, hello there, fierce one, she said, her voice warm. That's quite a grip you've got. Kor's eyes widened. This was wrong. Prey didn't laugh. Prey ran or fought or submitted. Prey didn't make sounds of joy when a predator's fangs were locked around their appendage. He bit down harder, his developing jaw muscles straining. Alara laughed again, softer this time. Oh, you're committed to this, aren't you? Okay, little guy. Let's see who's more stubborn. A Carthax cub or a human engineer who once spent 14 hours debugging faulty code. She returned to her work, completely ignoring the predator attached to her hand. She reached for tools with her free hand, made notes on her datapad, and even took a sip of coffee, all while Kor hung suspended, his young mind struggling to process this impossible situation. Thexerol moved to intervene, but something stopped him. Perhaps it was the ease in Alara's posture. Perhaps it was the way she hummed an old Earth melody while she worked, as if having a Carthax cub's fangs embedded in her glove was the most natural thing in the universe. Minutes passed. Kor's jaw began to ache. His pride warred with confusion. Why wasn't she afraid? Why did her scent carry notes of what his instincts identified as contentment and affection? Alara set down her welder and looked at the cub with those impossibly expressive human eyes. You know what I think, Kor? I think you're not really trying to hurt me. I think you're testing me, seeing what I'm made of. She reached up with her free hand, slowly, carefully, and gently scratched behind the bony ridge above his eye. The sensation was unlike anything Kor had experienced. Carthax didn't engage in casual physical contact outside their immediate family units. But this human's touch was pleasant, soothing. His eyes half closed involuntarily. "There we go," Ilara murmured. "You're not so scary. Just curious. Just young and trying to figure out this weird universe where humans show up out of nowhere and don't follow any of the rules you've learned." She laughed again, that same warm, genuine sound, and something shifted in Kor's developing consciousness. This wasn't prey behavior. This was something else entirely. Something that transcended the ancient dynamics of predator and prey. His jaws loosened. Ilara carefully extracted her glove, examining the small puncture marks with professional interest. "Good bite force. Your parents must be proud." She offered Kor her free hand, palm up, no threat display, no submission posture, just an invitation. Kor, for the first time in his young life, felt something he would later understand as respect, not for strength or dominance, but for something more profound. He placed his clawed hand in hers. Thexral's translator failed to capture the complexity of the sound he made. But Ilara understood. She looked up at the ambassador and smiled again. "He's going to be a good one," she said simply. Later, when the diplomatic convoy arrived at Coalition headquarters, Ambassador Thexral would deliver a report that fundamentally altered humanity's standing in galactic society. He would speak of a species that didn't fit the predator-prey paradigm, that responded to aggression with laughter, that offered gentleness where others offered fear. But in that moment, in the cargo bay of the Vigilant Dawn, there was only a human and a cub, bridging an evolutionary gulf with something as simple as a laugh, and the galaxy would never be the same.